All right, let's just jump right into it. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we are looking at something that is, quite frankly, the absolute pinnacle of automotive artistry. We're talking about the legendary Bugatti Type 57 SC Atlantic. Now, if you're someone who geeks out over that perfect intersection where high-performance engineering meets just breathtaking aesthetic design, well, you are definitely in the right place today. We're going to break down exactly how this pre-war French Grand Tour, designed by the brilliant Jean Bugatti between 1936 and 1938, basically cemented its legacy as one of the most exclusive, stunning, and insanely valuable cars ever built.
But to kick things off, I want to ask you a question. How does an engineering flaw actually become a multi-million-dollar artistic signature? It sounds totally counterintuitive, right? I mean, in the world of high-end design, we are conditioned to expect absolute perfection. We want constraints to be hidden away or engineered out of existence entirely. But as we're going to see today, one of the most famous design elements of the Type 57 SC Atlantic, the thing that makes it instantly recognizable to pretty much any car enthusiast on the planet, well, it was actually born from a very specific, highly practical engineering problem. It is a fascinating design mystery, and it really just highlights the absolute genius of Jean Bugatti.
So let's move into Section 1, a sculptural automotive masterpiece subtitled The Pinnacle of Pre-War French Design.
To really understand the Atlantic, you can't just look at it as a car. You have to look at it as a rolling sculpture. When you see a Type 57 SC Atlantic, the proportions just instantly grab you. You've got this incredibly long hood stretching way out in front, which is hinting at the massive power plant underneath, and we will definitely get to that beast in a minute. Then, your eyes just naturally flow back to that elegant, sloping teardrop cabin. That shape was actually heavily influenced by the brand new science of aerodynamics in the 1930s. But honestly, the most striking feature, the absolute, undeniable signature of this entire design, is that dramatic central dorsal seam. It's basically a riveted spine running perfectly down the center of the car. It starts right at the front grille, goes up over the roofline, and trails all the way down to the tail. It literally splits the car perfectly in half.
So the obvious question is, why is that seam even there? And this brings us right back to that opening mystery. The Atlantic's iconic design actually started with an earlier concept car known as the Aerolith. For that concept, Bugatti wanted to be super cutting edge, so they used a highly advanced, ultra-lightweight magnesium alloy. But there was a massive catch. This stuff was incredibly flammable, meaning it absolutely cannot be welded using traditional methods. The heat would just ruin it, or worse. So to join the body panels together, the engineers had to flange the metal outward and physically rivet it together. That is exactly what created that prominent external spine. Now here is where the true design genius kicks in. When they eventually moved to build the actual production Atlantic, Bugatti switched the body material over to aluminum. And aluminum, well, you can weld that easily. From a purely engineering standpoint, they didn't need those rivets anymore. But Jean Bugatti made the incredibly bold, deliberate choice to keep that riveted seam anyway, just strictly for its aesthetic power.
And that choice right there brilliantly illustrates how an unmistakable silhouette was born entirely out of a design constraint. What started out as a mandatory, frankly annoying practical workaround for difficult metal became a deliberate stylistic masterpiece. By keeping that dorsal seam, Jean Bugatti gave the Atlantic this incredible sense of forward motion, even when it's just parked. I mean, it literally looks like the spine of some sleek predatory animal. It's the perfect example of how true artistic vision can take a stubborn mechanical limitation and just flip it into a legendary design signature.
All right, moving on to Section 2, Power Under the Hood, subtitled Advanced Engineering Meets Art. Now, for all of its flowing sculptural beauty, make no mistake, the Type 57 SC Atlantic was an absolute monster on the road. The gorgeous design we just talked about wasn't just for show. It was basically skin stretched tightly over some of the most aggressive, cutting-edge mechanics of the era. And to understand the beast beneath the beauty, we really just need to decode its name. The S stands for surbaissé, which is French for lowered. Bugatti engineered this incredibly clever lowered chassis by literally passing the rear axle right through the frame instead of letting it ride underneath. This dramatically dropped the center of gravity, which heavily improved the car's handling. But sticking with our main theme of design here, it also massively improved the look, giving the Atlantic that low, wide, super predatory stance we just talked about. And then the C stands for compressor, which means this engine was supercharged.
And man, that supercharger did some heavy lifting. It helped produce a totally staggering 200 horsepower. Let that sink in for a second. We are talking about a 3.3-liter dual overhead cam straight-8 engine pushing out 200 horsepower in the late 1930s. To really put that into perspective for you, most standard everyday cars from that era were struggling to even hit 40 or 50 horsepower. This was essentially a raw race car engine wrapped up in a perfectly tailored French suit.
Because of that immense power, combined with that incredibly sleek aerodynamic teardrop design we talked about earlier, the Type 57 SC Atlantic could hit a top speed of roughly 124 miles per hour. That's 200 kilometers per hour. 124 miles per hour in a pre-war car. That figure just really drives home the reality of this machine, doesn't it? It wasn't just rolling art, it was one of the absolute fastest road-going cars on the entire planet at the time. There's just such a fascinating contrast between those raw, aggressive 1930s performance specs and its incredibly elegant, flowing exterior.
And the innovation definitely didn't stop at the engine block. Right beneath that beautiful aluminum shell was cutting-edge mechanical tech that totally pushed the boundaries of its era. It featured independent front suspension to manage all that immense speed and give the driver a much better ride. Plus, it had a dry sump lubrication system. Now, if you know cars, you know that's a technology usually reserved exclusively for high-level motorsports. It ensures the engine stays perfectly lubricated even under intense cornering forces. So literally every single inch of the Atlantic's engineering was just as thoughtfully designed as its riveted spine.
Which brings us to Section 3, the missing voiture noire, subtitled, An Unsolved Automotive Mystery.
So, we've talked about the art, we've talked about the engineering, but the legend of the Type 57 SC Atlantic is also deeply, deeply tied to its extreme rarity, and a historical mystery that still absolutely captivates the car world today. Get this, Bugatti only ever produced 4 of these Atlantic coupes between 1936 and 1938. Just 4. 3 of those cars are accounted for. They're known to survive today in very exclusive private collections. But that 4th slice of the production run, which is literally 25% of all the Atlantics ever built, is completely missing. That specific car was famously known as La Voiture Noire, or the Black Car, and it actually originally belonged to Jean Bugatti himself. The story goes that right before World War II broke out, the car was supposedly loaded onto a train headed for Bordeaux to hide it from invading forces. And it just vanished. It has never been seen since. To this day, it remains one of the greatest, most tantalizing unsolved mysteries in the entire history of the automotive world.
Because of this totally staggering combination of extreme rarity, an intoxicating unsolved mystery, and, of course, its unparalleled sculptural beauty and engineering, those surviving 3 Atlantics are prized beyond belief. We are talking about estimated values reaching well into the tens of millions of dollars. They are the ultimate crown jewels of the car collecting world, regularly taking Best in Show at prestigious global Conkers events. At this point, they really aren't just cars anymore. They are essentially priceless historical artifacts.
But the legacy of the Atlantic goes way, way beyond just its crazy monetary value. First off, it represents the absolute peak of pre-war craftsmanship. It perfectly captures this tiny, specific moment in time right before the world changed forever. A moment where luxury, performance, and pure artistic design were just blended flawlessly by Jean Bugatti. Second, its design influence is still heavily felt today. It directly inspires modern hypercars like Bugatti's own recent La Voiture Noire homage. And finally, it just stands as a permanent benchmark for automotive elegance. Whether you're looking at it in a museum, at a concours exhibition, or just studying design history, the Type 57 SC is literally the standard by which all other automotive beauty is measured.
Which kind of leaves us with this final thought for the day. We've just seen how a truly brilliant designer took a frustrating engineering constraint, a riveted spine that had to be there, and turned it into an enduring symbol of beauty. The Type 57 SC Atlantic is the ultimate benchmark of elegance in the automotive world for sure, but it really makes you think about design in your own everyday life. So I want you to look around you today and ask yourself, what represents the ultimate benchmark of elegance in your own life? What is a piece of art, or maybe just a super functional everyday object where form and function perfectly collide for you? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep looking for that perfect balance of design and engineering out there, and I'll catch you next time.